lots of people have been saying go to Beck Road and go to Bruffham Road and all these other streets which are squatted around here. We haven't got time for that because we just go to a small little loop of the squats that I knew when I was involved in. So I came to Hackney, well, my best mate moved to Hackney in 1979 and I moved about 3 years later, so early 80s. I'll just say a little about the climate that's going on here then. In the early 80s, late 70s, it was incredibly poor here. And the whole government thinks it's changed. So that's probably a good place to start with Hackney Town Hall, who sort of were very much in the mix of the whole squatting situation. So what happened was, when Margaret Thatcher came in, half the homes in Hackney were owned by the council. And then there was a massive shift where central government said, you've got to sell off your properties and all the money you get from selling off these houses won't go to you in here, won't go to Hackney, they go to central government. So these lot in here, being left-wing militants, basically said, fuck you, and didn't want to sell the houses and didn't want to give the money to central government. So houses became empty. Hackney Council had no money to restore them. All their money went into the big estates. The housing stock went down and down and down. And then scumbags like me moved in and started living in all the places around here. So I think about the time that we were doing that, there was 100,000 empty properties in London alone. And I think it was around 20,000 empty properties in Hackney. So you could literally walk down pretty much any street in Hackney and you could find empty properties. You could literally walk up to a door, and I'll show you some of them as I did walk up to. Walk on, and you wouldn't have to break in. You could just walk in and have it. So the law at that time was you're allowed to squat. You weren't allowed to break an entry. So if you broke into a property, the neighbours could phone up the police and you could be evicted. But most cases you didn't need to. You could go around the back, get in through a window, push a door gently, a window would be open and you could move in. And then if you did your research, which is what me and everyone I knew was doing, we researched and we found out who the homes belonged to. So we always squatted council properties because we didn't want to squat anyone's house, even if it was abandoned, even if it was empty, because the East End still had a bit of a reputation of people coming in and getting quite heavy, and they could, put the frighteners on you. So if you went through Hackney Council properties, which were empty, they would come, they would see you were there, they would serve you a notice, and then you'd go for a whole court procedure, which normally took around 6 months. So I just thought I'd lay out the sort of what it was like at that time. So this was the sort of, as is now, the heart of Hackney, and the pub on the corner there was called the Samuel Pepys. So that was our go-to place back then. Every Friday, Saturday night, it felt like the whole squatting community in Hackney, not Stoke Newington, but just Central Hackney, would meet there, and about 11 or 12 o'clock when it was throwing out time, everyone would go, where's the party? We'll all go off to a big house, big garden, bands in the back, big squat parties all night long, which is probably where I met quite a few of you. So I'm going to start off with just talking about the building behind you guys, which is next to Weatherspoons, and I can't actually see it at all now because it's covered up by the palm tree, but it's next to the old library, and in between the library and the Weatherspoons. The place with the pink door, the guy having a fag, he's having a nice toke now. And we got into there in around 91. Is someone going to correct me on that? Can you remember? Around 91, I think it was. And we called it the Spiky Thing With Curves. So this was one of our main event places. So at the time I was squatting on Ellingford Road, which I'll talk about, we go up there in a minute. So we had Ellingford Road and London Lane and Mentwell Terrace, so 3 streets, 2 of them running back to back, one at a right angle, about 100 of us, and about 8 or 9 of people from Ellingford Road came down here and took over that building. So we had a kitchen in those big windows there, downstairs was a party room, and then I think we have 4 or 5 floors of party area. So they were huge parties. On Saturday nights, I was a doorman for quite a few of these parties. We had queues going right up past the library, and then some of the events we'd have people performing, juggling, all acts out in the square, and we'd be up on the roof, and we would project films, projection slides all onto the town hall, and we have fire throwers, juggling, all these sort of things going out here. Then the party's inside, and then the side of the building where Baxter Court is now, there used to be a guy called Andrew Scientist, who I'll talk about a bit later. One night we got him to dangle off the top of the building, and he painted this huge mural on the side of the building, which is of a guy being hit by the South African police. I think it's meant to be one of the protesters in one of the Soweto, and it was about the apartheid in South Africa. Huge mural took up the whole of that wall, and it was a bit like the peace mural when you come into Dalston, and that was like our protest and about we were fighting back about what we thought we wanted, which was basically free housing in Hackney. So that's where we're going to start, and I think we'll walk to some houses and places. Is that okay? Any questions? Start of my my squatting career, as it were. So this would have been in 1987, I think it was, and that's the house there, 183. My girlfriend at the time was at London College of Furniture, and there was a notice up on the board saying someone wanted to move into a squat, so we came up here. And my friend Stuart, he had the whole house, 4 floors. They're quite big, these houses, and he had the first floor as his motorbike workshop, the second floor as his bedroom, and upstairs he gave to us. So that's how I moved in and started squatting initially. It was a great place. Next door, 185, was she was a squatter as well, but she wasn't the normal sort of squatter. She was in her late 70s, and I did go in there with my squat mate Josh once, but she was just had lots of cats, so it was just deep in newspaper. So she just fed the cats. I think there's about 150 cats there, and out the back she just threw all the cans. There's a pile of tin cans about 12 foot high. So that was quite an unusual squat in that situation. 2 doors down, 179, we had the Kilbrides, which is 5 brothers from the Highlands, who I got to know quite well. This house was all the squatters in Leeds, and I think the other one was from Blackburn. So there was 4 squats on this street. 2 houses on the end were both empty. That one was empty, that one was empty. So almost half the houses on this little part were either empty or squatted at the time. It was a great place to live. All the neighbours really liked us, which was great. They welcomed us here, and encouraged us to be here, which was great. And I spent about 2 years in this place, messing around, trying out photography and doing that. Then I went off for a year. And when I came back, I went to a party in 179 with the brothers, as we called them, and they invited me to live there. So I spent another 2 years living in that house. So this is where I sort of got to know Hackney, really. So it's a short walk to the Peeps, and then other streets were being squatted at different places. What was the one on Victoria Park Road? There was about 10 houses all in a row there, and Bruffin Road was squatted, and then things were changing this one, and we got to know the neighbours. So the house on the end was actually a Jamaican family were living there, and they had quite a few kids. So they got to hear that we were, they told us they were moving out, so they came round, knocked on our door, said the councillors are moving out, you should come in. So that was how we got quite a lot of squats. So we would go in on a Sunday night, and the council would come on the Monday morning to change the locks and change the keys. We would go, sorry, we're here, we're squatting it. So literally they would move out on a Sunday lunchtime, we would move on a Sunday night. The house next to it, that was so badly developed, so badly decayed, that it was just literally hanging apart. All the windows were broken, massive leaks in the roof, holes in the floor, and people used to come round from colleges and people we knew and say, well, where's a good place to squat? Where's a good place to squat? We'd always go that one, and they'd always go, brilliant, brilliant. They'd always go in there, walk up, open the door, look at all the dog shit and all the stuff, smash windows, go, no, and walk out. until a whole group of squatters came from Bailey College, Oxford, doctors and scientists and lawyers. And they moved in, and they were quite unusual. We were quite surprised when they moved in. They had they all seemed to have red hair, and they were very studious. And when they first did their parties, it was very, different to the normal parties in Hackney. But I'm still great friends with them now. It was an incredible mixture of people, and we're still really good friends now. So it was like that. It became a sort of family affair with all the people that lived here. And then at the time, London Fields was, as you know, no one goes to London Fields. And then it was just us lot. So it was quite a mad little place to just meet, and all the squatters playing football there on a Sunday. We used to play football with Beth Autumn, and different groups used to come down. There used to be little anarchist leagues of football, didn't there, with the Stoke Newington, the Clapton ones, and all the big estates had their own little football teams. So that was all quite amazing. So we'll walk up to Mentmore Terrace now, and then the Hackney Council changed their policies, and they didn't want to sell off to just private developers in the auctions. Although at that time, if you did go to the auctions, about 50 houses every month were being sold at auction by Hackney Council. And I remember them going for the £5,000 was the asking price for houses on Broadway Market at the time. Luckily, I was too clever to spend that money on a house down there. So I'm still nice and poor. But these houses, and you can see by their doors, they are, both those ones, they were bought up by housing associations. So housing associations made bids on some of them, and they were given them by Hackney Council. They transferred from council ownership to housing associations and housing cooperatives. So that was happening as well, and that's how I got kicked out of these houses. I lived in the two, and then I moved round to where we're going to go in a minute, which is Ellingthorpe Road. One more thing about this street, which is quite interesting, which didn't happen somewhere else, is that the doctors and lawyers from Oxford, they did get this incredible thing called adverse possession, which is the thing, if you have somewhere for 12 years, no one evicts you, no one contacts you, no one tells you it's their property, you can go to the law courts and say, this is our place, we've been here for an amount of time, and they actually got to keep that house. So that was quite amazing. It took 12 years to get it. I think they've changed that law. As you know now, squatting in residential is illegal now, so you can't do this. And I think they put up adverse possession to 15 years. But that was actually not meant for scumbags like me in Hackney to get houses. That was actually meant for rich landowners who put fences around fields next to their big estates so they could get extra land. So they kept that law in, so it's still in effect now, so you can do that. If you've got a big estate somewhere in England, put a bit of fence around the adjoining land, you could probably keep it. So that's still going. So they put the stairway in the back. So those two houses were both squatted together, both turned into a housing association, and then there are flats on the top floor, the middle floor. So there's 4 flats on 4 floors, and that staircase means there's more room inside rather than a stairway inside the house. I got to move so far. I've been here for 40 years. I think I've lived in 15 different places in London, but I've never moved more than 150 yards, just as far as my shopping trolley and my stuff could go. So this was obviously where we came from, Richmond Road, and if you know Colin O'Brien, it might be worth checking out. He's done lots of documentary projects around Hackney. He's got some great pictures of this part of the street and this bit of the playground. This was actually squatted by Irish travellers. So there was a big encampment along here, all caravans going down here, and there were caravans in here as well. So that was sort of backdrop.
So none of that stuff existed, like what, like the vans were over there as well?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. That was a scaffolding yard. And there were caravans just on the pavement, on the road, so you couldn't really get down here, really. So where we are now is obviously the east side of London Fields, and the council decided everything the other side of the railway line was going to be part of a new industrial development zone. So all the streets and all the houses, the other side of this, which are really beautiful Georgian houses, were all condemned. So that was quite an interesting phase. So the building we can see opposite us was an old print works, really beautiful building. And all this terrace here was squatted, and the block there, you see the wood with the white pillar, that block there was all squatted. That whole block was squatted by dispatch riders, and they were really into 2CBs. There's a whole line of 2CBs outside there. Loads and loads of motorbikes. It's when people were cool and they had really big motorbikes to do dispatch driving rather than the electric ones. So that was quite a full-on squat round there. These ones were there were French guys in the grey one. The red one was another group from the Highlands of Scotland who came because of the Highlands brothers who I live with. So I got to know them very well. They were massive drug dealers, so they were selling hash the whole time out of that house, which was quite amazing. So there was always people just pouring in and out of that house, and there was always a big bag of some substances on the table going in and out, which was quite amazing. They were offered that house for 5,000, but I don't think they took it in the end. I think that's. And then the house next to that was squatted by a guy called Andrew Scientist. So he painted this mural on the side. You see the London Fields Community Trust Studios, which didn't exist. That was just him, but he was always trying to be creative. So he was doing lots of pottery at the time. He painted, that's the Van Gogh field. So this is the last painting that Van Gogh painted in Arles before he died in suicide. That's quite interesting. So Andrew was a good friend of all of ours in the local neighbourhood. He used to come down, as I said, to the Spiky Things, painting that huge mural on the side. He would always turn up to all the parties, and he would never drink, never smoke, always helping out, always be the last at the party, sweeping up, clearing up, making it all good. But he did come unstuck when he brought a busker back to his place who played loud music, and it's a really horrific story, which I don't know, I suppose I've started now, but it was in the press, and sadly he murdered the busker in the basement of his flat, put a hammer to his head and killed him. And I think that was why the mural is on the side of the building on Mare Street, because it actually looks like the scream of someone dying. Years later, well, after he committed the murder, he came round to see me and Josh and the brothers, and he asked us to lay a concrete floor and have a studio. So we laid a concrete floor over the body in the basement of the guy who died and covered it up. And then my friend moved in, one of the brothers, and moved there for a number of years. We didn't know that he'd been murdered. We had no idea about any of that. And then years later, he came back to England to confess his sins and was given 7 years in prison, where he served, and he's now part of a religious community in Canada, where he's still carrying on his community work. So he joined a religious cult in Sydney, where he carried on his work there. He confessed all his sins, came back, did his time in prison, and then he's gone back to his religious community. So it's a very strange and very sad, distressing story. So there's all these incredible stories mixed up. But
Did they dig the concrete up?
the police came, they put a big tent outside, they went in there. Sorry?
It was about 30 years
That's
ago.
right, yeah, about 30 years ago. Yeah, well, I was actually here with one of the brothers when the police came, and we were like, what is going on? And even in prison, he was he was teaching all the groups, teaching painting, teaching drawing. Quite an incredible person, but obviously not very good with his temper, and obviously very sad that this guy died. So it's a very sad story. But so this whole area was squatted, and this led me to the street where some of this ended up. Ellingthorpe Road, where Stuart lives, who's a notorious local builder. And we have someone else, I think. Kev, is he here? Is he gone? Oh, there he is. Did you used to live as well here, didn't you, Anna?
I was on the other side.
Oh, you're London Lane. Okay. So this is where I ended up after Richmond Road. I squatted number 17. So see that gap there where the pink bit is, and then big numbers on the other side of the road. That's where my house was, but they knocked that one down. So this street was like all the streets in between the railway line and Mare Street were all condemned. So this is some of the smaller houses that were condemned, and the Hackney Council owned them all, and one by one as someone's tenancy ran out, they didn't renew them. Oh yeah. By the way, yeah, there's no houses at all on this side. So all these were warehouses at the time, and they were all Turkish garment factories. All these were the houses, and where that pink bit is, they're called live work units. But they were also, that was just one street all the way down, but there was a gap for a scaffolding yard as well, which I lived next door to. So as one person moved out, we moved in, and then you talk to the neighbours, and some would be a housing association or a council tenant, and we'd be chatting to them. They say, "Oh, we just got our order. We're going to be evicted next week, next month, whatever it is." They tell us. We go, okay. And on Sunday night, as I said before, they would move out, and we would always have someone who always wanted somewhere to live. And this became known as a very safe place to live. I ended up squatting on this street for, I think, around 10 years. So it was quite an incredible place, quite an incredible community. I knew everyone on this road, and I was pretty good friends with most of the people here, I think. It was a great community. And in around 94, 93, that sort of time, the council decided that they were going to up their campaign to demolish Ellingthorpe Road, London Lane, Mentmore Terrace, all the streets. So we were given eviction notices. If you ever seen my photography, I did a picture of one of my neighbours, Philippa, reading the eviction notice. That was shot on the next street. And all the pictures I took were all about trying to raise awareness what was happening in this part of Hackney, trying to stop the evictions. So that time became quite special because even we didn't know people, we all got to start to meet each other. We started to have meetings, we started to organise, we started to do parties, and the whole thing became much more interesting and much more intense, I suppose. That went on for a number of years, and I even made a model of this street, Mare Street and London Lane, which was on display at Museum London for 30 years. They've just taken it down because the museum's moved into Spitalfields Market. No, Smithfield, always get wrong. Smithfields Market next year, I think, opens. So now, as you can see, if you look through this beautiful doorway here, as I said about those houses on Richmond Road, lots of these houses have been turned into flats. So to save space, you walk in here and you can see through the gap that there's external stairways. So to fight our eviction, eventually we sort of joined up with the Hackney Council, and we filmed a housing cooperative called London Field Solutions, and we put forward a proposal to the council to save the houses and not get evicted. Part of that deal was we had to give up the houses on the end, so all those new buildings we had to give up, and we had to give up some of the houses on London Lane, and we had to give up the spaces in between, which we're going down that way now. So that's my studio there, and my bedroom there. So we're just about to walk through my house and then into what used to be the scaffolding yard going back, and then we had communal gardens, and we had a big communal space called the grey area. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So people ask me sort of things like, did you have heating? Did you have electric? Did you have all those sort of things? Yeah, we had everything. So you come in, and then you would inform the electricity board that you moved in, and they would just send you normal bills. So you would just pay your bills as normal. Are they coming around? I think he said he's coming around. Maybe I'll just give Kat a quick call just to check. And yeah, so those houses were there. So you see the two houses on the end, they were all part of it, and they were joined up all the way through apart from this gap. And if we were back today, we'd be standing in the scaffolding yard now, before we squatted out. So again, the scaffolders who used to actually live, they were an old traditional Hackney family. They actually lived in my house, and then they were evicted by the council, and then they still kept the scaffolding yard, and eventually they got their orders to move. Same thing happened, they knocked on my door, said we're being evicted, get your guys in here. So we came in here and we squatted this as well. So this became a garden, and Jake and Emma, Paul and Yuri. Who else used to live here? There are about 4 or 5. Oh yeah, John and Jane. There are a few trucks, buses, that's living vehicles, new age travelling vehicles parked up in this area. Where this one is 17, which is the number of my house, even though house 17's got knocked down, was an old warehouse. So downstairs and here was a garage, just back there, the garage and led into it. Downstairs was all tyres and upstairs was empty. So again, when the garage moved out, they told us they were moving out. We went in, we cleared out all the tyres, and it was literally to the ceiling full of car tyres. It took us about 2 or 3 weeks to take all the tyres out. And then we turned that into a community area. And upstairs, my friend Mark Fairhouse and Mark Watts lived in a big sort of open, cool, loft type squat in there. And then all these houses, all the gardens they were all joined up, weren't they? Pretty much all sort of joined up. And then we made a hole or a doorway into the bottom. And then you could also get in from the alleyway the other side, which is the main entrance. So Kev used to put on cinema nights.
We put on cinema.
We put on cinema.
Squat cap, and there was parties and cabaret bits and bobs.
Yeah.
Bingo. Bingo all night with Nora.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Cabaret nights. We used to, I think every night, Sunday was a cinema night, wasn't it?
Sunday was cafe night.
Cafe night.
I know there was other bits that were around.
That's right, yeah.
Installations or stuff going on.
Yeah, and then weekends were the party nights. So Saturday nights were the big party nights. They would go on all night. Asian Dub Foundation played once, didn't they?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, they played. If anyone knows Asian Dub Foundation, they played there once.
Yeah,
Mr. Nice, you got Mr. Nice.
Mr. Nice to go.
Does everyone know Mr. Nice?
Since prison.
Yeah. Does everyone know Mr. Nice, the big drug dealer? Yeah. So he did his first reading when he got out of prison about his experiences about selling drugs and all that sort of stuff.
Chaotic.
It was quite chaotic, but that was an amazing community space. So we had that, and we got raided a few times by the police, didn't we? Because we didn't have any license obviously or anything like that, but we sell alcohol all night and there's music all night. But it was a great space and it worked really well actually, considering there was very
Also
little.
painted by Andy Scientist. That's why it's called the Grey Area.
Oh, that's right, yeah. So he painted that. He would be there every morning on Sunday morning, sweeping up and cleaning up the place. And then these were all houses. So Lara lived in that one, blah blah blah. I could name every house, every group of people. And then the same, these houses here, this is London Lane obviously. Not obviously, sorry. This is London Lane, obvious to me. And all our friends live in there, so all the gardens came in here. So this was our bit where that part of the street, the scaffolding yard, that part, the community area, London Lane, all could mix up. As they do now, Cat and Christian have these great parties here, which I'm sure they invite everyone to, with amazing bands. Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. And then as we did our deal with the council, they wanted something from us. So they sent a group of guys down from Hume in Manchester. Everyone ever heard of Hume?
Yeah.
So in Manchester, there's a place called Hume, which had these crescent estates, which are really famous around the time of Joy Division and the Hacienda. I had a mate living in there at that time I went up to. And they were notoriously horrific estates, which again became all squatted. Hundreds of people lived there, but they took it over as a housing association, formed a housing cooperative, took it all over and kept the community there. So there was a guy called Smythe, what's his name? Anyway, he got involved in community action. He got him to come down and he got a plan saying, we'll be like that. We'll have a community, we'll save the community, but you have to give away lots of stuff. So we had to give away all these houses, including my house.
My house.
Your house as well, yeah. Kev used to live in number 7, was it? That one?
I live with Lara.
Okay, number 9. Number 9. And this house is here. So there were more houses down there as well that went further down. And that went on to a massive big garage. So they're all big garages down there, mechanic garages. That was a big industrial bit there. So we had to give away lots of properties in order to make this deal forward. And we're all stoned and we're all fucking paranoid. We're all like, this is a conspiracy to make us all hate each other. You know, concrete divide, make him move out of his house, let them keep their house. So it was a very strange time to negotiate with the council what was going on. But after 2, 3, well, maybe 5 years, we eventually sorted out this agreement with the council and gave up this part, and they made the live work units. Those live works people living in, those were just meant to be just for work units, not living.
But we let people live in them as well. As long as they work in them, they can live in them as well.
So you've changed it now. So they were giving it on leases to begin with, weren't you?
Yeah.
And then you bought it afterwards.
But the thing is, thanks to you lot, that there was a thing that was built by the council with a grant from the EU.
Yeah.
And that grant came with a covenant attached that said it could only be used for small creative businesses.
That's right. Yeah.
So everyone on site, everyone an occupant of one of these properties has to use it as a place of work for small creative business. And we had our own legal battle because the council tried to sell it on the open market. We managed to secure the whole site, 10 properties together. So we collectively own the freehold and split it into leaseholds, but maintained that covenant within the leaseholds. So going forwards,
Yeah, brilliant. It's so great that this creative part of it has stayed here. And the original people who originally got the leases on these places have been able to stay here. And that's what's just happened with us. So we managed to form the LFS, and there were some amazing people as part of our community. Joe, Lara, different people, Kev, lots of people played big parts in doing that. And we, as a housing cooperative, we had to borrow £2 million, I think it was, because all the houses were in an incredibly bad state. They're all falling down. They're all completely messed up. So we borrowed the money through a housing association, and we did all the houses up. So we built these extensions on them, and most of them are flats now. Those ones are houses. You see some people living there, and lots of our friends have got kids. The community's about to stay there. So yeah, it's quite a happy story as it went forward. So lots of our friends, I moved out here about 7 years ago. I moved out, but I've only gone to the next street over, so I haven't gone too far. Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else to say about this bit?
What was the deal here then? How was this different to?
So this got taken over by the council. So we kept those two houses at the end.
Yeah.
We kept London Lane, some of the houses, and we kept that part of Ellingford Road. But we had to give the all the rights to this area to the Hackney Council. They converted into live work units, and then they leased them out on an individual basis, 10 individual plots, for artists to come here to live here, and that's become its own community. And then they had to fight to stay there because the Hackney Council then wanted to sell the whole lot of to developers after that. So yeah, so we wanted to stay as a community area because lots of people had small businesses in one way or the other, whether they're artists or whatever it was. So we've tried to keep that at this sort of heart of what we're doing here.
Yeah, and I think you helped. I think people in your helped the council find or put that EU grant forward to the council.
Yeah, that's right.
Push them in that direction.
Yeah, we wanted it to be not obviously sold off expensive luxury flats. This is what the whole of Hackney is full of. We wanted to keep the community.
And I thought that was exactly what it was.
Okay, yeah, exactly, yeah. So that's good. Okay, so I haven't got much time. We'll keep on going a bit more. And they managed to keep their house and stay here. So this was the only house that was never bought by the council. This was owned by a Jamaican family, lovely family, loads of kids. Cinema you can see there. Can you see the different cinema? No, just here, directly here. Looks like flats for some reason now. That was a beautiful cinema, which was turned into a bingo hall. Hi, Jason. Which was turned into a bingo hall, and then so it was a cinema for years. Then it was a bingo hall, and then me and Owen, one of the Scottish brothers, It's a bit noisy here, isn't it? Went round the back. We didn't break in. We didn't break any laws, but we did. The back door just fell off when we climbed over, and we got inside.
Mainly off an arms.
Yeah, and that was one of the best party venues we had in Hackney. We didn't have it for as long as the Spiky Things With Curves, but I think we had it for about 6 months. And we went inside. All the bingo balls were still on the floor. All the booths, the projectors were still up in the ceiling. All the old speakers were there. Some of the seating on the what's it called? The balcony was still there. It was the most beautiful venue. So we went in there, had a few days just messing around in there. Then we knew lots of sound systems in the local area. And this area was obviously huge for people like Spiral Tribe, and especially a guy called Steve Bedlam, who had Bedlam Sound System. He was a Hackney boy, grew up on the estate across the road, and he started doing all the parties in this area. The other thing that happened under Margaret Thatcher was deindustrialisation. And everyone talks about deindustrialisation in terms of Manchester, Birmingham, the industrial north. But 1 million people in London got laid off from small factories. The factories in London weren't the big ones, they were like 20 to 500 people. So the warehouse just opposite London here was typical of that. There were sweatshops for the garment industry. Hundreds of people, the whole of the East End had hundreds of these factories, which were perfect for raves. So the whole rave thing that grew up in the late 80s, early 90s, late 90s, all that time, this was a perfect place to have. Every weekend you could have a free venue. And we would walk up here. One of Steve Bedlam's first squatted venues wasn't actually the warehouse where we did have lot parties. It was actually the Railway Arch. And that went on the bank holiday, which was this weekend just gone. No, this weekend just coming, where they party from Friday night till Tuesday afternoon. So that was quite amazing. But again, now it's luxury apartment. I lived in that house. I've lived in about 8 or 9 of these houses. The alleyway down there, the flats above were all squatted as well. They got the electric from the street light in the alleyway. They got the electrics by wiring into the lamppost, taking it into those flats there. If you walk down the alleyway, that's how you got into the grey area. And then this was the garage, which also went into that grey area to go in 3 different ways. Well, 4 different ways you could get into. But we kept all the crowds going into that entrance there, where those gates are now. And these are really lovely houses, but again, now part of the house really. And there was one really memorable party where a few of us got an old bus that was dumped in Victoria Park, and I towed it back with an old van or an old truck, and we towed it here and then left it, and then someone moved the bus down there.
Someone.
I don't know who. So if you wanted to get into the party, you'd have to get into the bus, go through the bus, and out the back door of the bus and into the door of the party, which is just a great entrance. Going through a bus into party was great. And all these floors are all separate parties going on, different sound system on each floor. I shan't name all the sound systems, but yeah. So now everything we're walking past. This was called Lady Eve, another garment factory, which was squatted for about 4 years. And at one point it had the only telephone line in the whole neighbourhood. So when they squatted it, there always used to be about 10 people around here waiting to use the telephone because their bill hasn't been connected yet. So everyone used to come around here just to make their telephone calls so everywhere it was, which is quite funny. Piano workshop in the back, and when it was actually left empty, you could go in there and the pianos were still in there, about 30 pianos in the back. So if you can imagine this whole grand avenue now, but this was pretty much fucked over because different people came in. And there was a big thing called weigh it in culture, where some people came in and rather than moving in, they weighed it in. So they took out copper pipes, tiles. So this got pretty fucked up pretty soon. So if you were driving around East London at that time, even in Camden, Islington, Bow, all these sort of places, and the police pulled you over, if you had an old double-decker, if you had an old lorry, an old bus, an old truck, and you were basically dreadlocks crusty with your dog, and you're a traveller, the police would say, come and park up here. Because this was known as a no man's land. They didn't want anyone else here. So when you came from Ellingford Road from my street, you walked past London Lane, the cream cakers, you walked on to the mental morons they were called. And this whole street, all the way along there, was buses and trucks. And this is where Steve Bedlam parked up. And also I can see two 2000 DS t-shirts on here today. Come on, move on, we are. So 2000 DS, it stands for 2000 Dirty Squatters. So we just go down to their house now, back to probably 1991, I reckon. This train station didn't exist here, so London Fields wasn't a train station. The trains used to just go past really fast. This whole street was buses and trucks, and we've got one house remaining of the original terrace. And they got bigger. So these are the small end of them. When they went up, they had the big pillars either side of the door and big steps going up. And that went all the way down there. And most of them have become vandalised. The Irish travellers had taken a lot of the tiles off some of the earlier ones. But I think there were two here that was known as the DS house. So there was Kelvin, who was Duncan's brother, and they were restoring 2CVs at a time. 2CVs seem to be very popular around here. They're very easy to work on. So there's a whole line of 2CVs up there, all bits all over the place. And they would have big parties in there. So there was one house which was squatted. But when I talk about squatted, I had a squat where you could walk in the door, there was a cooker, there was a kitchen, there was even bedrooms and a bath. The squat here didn't have a floor in it. They ripped out the floor because they wanted a big fire. So when you actually went in, you could look all the way up to the roof, and it was like sound system, big speakers, party in the back, and then the one next door, it was basically just bare floorboards and people just crashing out. So people were living between trucks, houses, garage, it all sort of became one. And this, I think, I was trying to remember if it's this arch or next arch. So Steve Bedlam's got this. He's got his bus there, he's set up a sound system there. They've blocked off the other entrance of a truck. Gary, 2000 GS, his band's playing in there, I remember that. All the gardens are all locked into one. There's vehicles literally everywhere, and there's people out in the streets. And that's really hardcore, banging techno. So it all comes from, obviously, Spiral Tribe, which I'm wearing that t-shirt today. I've never been part of Spiral Tribe, but we did party together for a bit in Europe. But blaring music, and this went on for 3 days. So literally, this area was literally no man's land, apart from those sort of people. And it was a little bit intimidating. I was living here then, and even I found it a little bit intimidating, walking past all the buses, trucks, and mechanics, big sound systems, and the bands playing in these houses. It was quite a spectacular environment. And obviously, because of that, and all the fighting and all the disputes, that they never really got round to developing this area. So now they're only just starting to develop this street. So now that building just down the end is one of the swings on the roof with the glass floors to go to the concierge, and you can look up. I think they took that inspiration from 2000 GS when you went into the squat here and you looked up through the ceiling and you just saw the holes in the roof, the sound system. Yeah, I think, and obviously there were squats all around there. There were squats on the other side of the estates, so lots of people. So there's a lot of people in this area. We could talk about the school on Wilton Way. We could talk about Bruffham Road with all the vehicles and the mob, the band The Mob used to live there, and the Crass and the politics of Crass and all that came out of it. And all the other streets and all the other people and all the other pubs and the squatted pubs. But I haven't got time, but we did right for an hour, didn't we? So we could ask questions, but thank you very much for listening to me waffle on and try and remember a bit of the shit that's in my head. Thank you.